Hey, dear viewers, welcome back to Oblivion class restoration project where I can't use crafting skills and I'm sad and depressed.
Why are we still here?
Today's build is the Knight. It is another sword and board character, but who said these characters were boring?
Witness, all of Jerusalem, holy God, and me.
There was a list of goals for me to achieve with this one. Firstly, create a very defensive tank with no crafting skills. This one I partly failed since I needed honed metal to prevail on legendary difficulty. Secondly, achieve complete dominance over the battlefield simply through swordsmanship and shield bashing. This one I succeeded at mainly because unlocking most perks for both heavy armor and block in Vokrii makes every enemy look pathetic and they just keep stumbling and being staggered and being thrown into the air. Thirdly, use illusion in a way that would not turn the character into a spell sword or a night blade. I think this one was a success too, well, more or less. The knight is obviously the heroic protector of the realm and its people. He is an excellent fighter but also a leader and a shining example of bravery. His reputation precedes him, putting fear into the hearts of the enemies of Skyrim, aka we use illusion spells for crowd control in between sword fights. Here is the list of mods, the usual stuff: Vokrii, Evenstar, Morningstar, Odin and Summermyst. Immersive speechcraft is neat to have if you need to have some use for the speech skill, which is otherwise made completely irrelevant in this build because of the Odin illusion spells. You may also need the Vokrii Odin compatibility patch, as I used a perk available only in the patch. It is there on the Vokrii page. Wintersun was also used, but the power it gave me can be safely skipped, so it's optional. Honed metal is strongly advised, although I refrained from using double enchantments. I still needed a little bit more power than is doable with unperked enchanting and smithing. Unless you don't mind playing on master, of course, or even expert, you should definitely use honed metal for this one. On the aesthetics side, I used the Hedge Knight armor from Immersive Armors. Since we can't craft it, you will have to enable the distribution for this set in the MCM, so it also makes Sky UI a required mod, I guess. We have a noble white wolf cloak from Winter is Coming, and the steel sword is remodeled with a wonderful mod called Believable Weapons. For the race, I went with a Nord. Nords are resistant to stagger from power attacks and bashes in Morningstar. Seems fitting, and also this is a bit of a nostalgia trip for me. My first ever Elder Scrolls character was a Nord Knight. The attributes ratio is 2 points of stamina per 3 of health. We need a lot of stamina for bashing, shield charging, etc., but we will have a very unique way of managing stamina thanks to the Evenstar's Lady Stone, which blocks stamina regeneration in combat but restores some of your stamina each time you block an attack. This creates a combat style requiring some patience and timing, which I think is quite interesting. The stone also increases the damage of bashing, which is wonderful because we can stack it with a Summermyst enchantment. From the Wintersun gods, I choose Ebon Arm, mainly for the devotee ability of Raven's Harvest. It reduces the armor of nearby enemies, giving you the total amount reduced. Very cool for tanky characters, especially before all the heavy armor perks are unlocked. For the skills, we have one-handed, block, heavy armor and illusion. I skipped the Oblivion Knight's speechcraft skill as there was almost no use for it. The build doesn't really need to collect tons of expensive items, and even the eloquent perk is made almost obsolete by the Captivate spell from Odin. With immersive speechcraft installed, you should probably try to get the skill value high, perhaps even take the mastery perk just for the sake of it. In one-handed, we take all the power attack perks on the right, all the sword perks and Victory Rush. Victory Rush will make the stamina management much easier, offsetting the weakness of the Lady Stone. Swords are pretty much the best weapons to use with the power attack perks because of their speed and range, I think. Disarming and throwing people to the ground with Disarming Slash and Crater Maker happens more frequently when you use a sword or a short sword, but short sword wasn't exactly fitting for this one. Meanwhile, the defensive overpowering Assault perk supports the overall defensiveness of the build. Speaking of which, an awful amount of perks is needed in block. Basically, take everything except weapon block and torch bash. Deadly Bash, both ranks of it, stacks with the Lady Stone buff and Summermyst enchantments to the point when I almost dealt the same amount of damage with my power bashes and my sword power attacks. With Mocking Blow and Overpowering Assault, both your weapon attacks and bashes will also decrease the enemy's attack damage and both penalties stack. Of course. In heavy armor, take everything but cushioned, matching set and Face of Death. The Hedge Knight armor has its base stats high enough to reach the effective maximum armor rating with unperked smithing, some blacksmith's elixir and 2 items of peerless smithing, so that's if you don't want to use honed metal for some reason. With Face of the Mountain and the Dragon Tail from block, you have a passive and an active way of throwing enemies into the air.
We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air.
With Elemental Defense and Elemental Protection, you get 65 Elemental Resistance with your shield raised. Tower of Strength and Poke the Dragon mean 2 separate checks on an incoming attack for a chance to stagger the attacking enemy. We will get even more of that with the Quake enchantment. And Tower of Strength combines nicely with the Nordic Perseverance, granting us both damage reduction and stagger chance reduction from enemy attacks. With Illusion, I could have the same complaint I had before, that is, I would prefer for some characters to have a non-magic way of influencing people, but complaining about stuff doesn't solve anything usually, so I embraced the skill this time, especially that combos are involved. So take all the ranks of Animage and the Master of the Mind, Neverworld, Terror, Paralyzing Fear, Iron Maiden, Splendor and Broken Minds. Broken Minds extends the duration of Odin's command spells, which I used sparsely, but they can be useful at times. If you wish to travel with a companion, and a knight should probably have someone to protect, Splendor will empower your rally and courage spells. They can also be used on people enthralled with your command spell, of course. Most importantly, Iron Maiden makes people affected by a Fury spell take some damage each time they attack, which is rather funny because with your perks and items people will also lose some extra stamina and have a lot of different chance rolls to stagger when attacking you. So unlike with most illusion builds, you actually want the infuriated enemies to attack you specifically. You can just keep your shield up and restore some of your stamina while watching them taking damage and stumble away and tiring away. Terror makes people affected by a fear spell drop their weapons, which is great against groups of bandits. What I liked to do was to cast Rout to disarm the whole group, then use Fury on the one enemy I wanted to focus on, almost like challenging them for a duel. I couldn't decide what enchantment I wanted on my sword, so I alternated between 2 swords, a sword of fear and of stamina absorption. Fear enchantment will not cause the enemies to drop their weapons, unfortunately, but is still a nice tool of crowd control, at least to separate the wheat from the chaff, so to say, sending the weaker ones away to let you focus on the bosses. Absorb stamina, of course, offsets the weakness of the Lady Stone, which is almost too cheesy for this build, almost. On the armor and apparel, I had 45 bashing on the helmet, 45 health on the armor, 45 one-handed on the gauntlets, unbreakable on the boots, grit on the necklace, quake on ring and shield, and 45 magicka on the cloak. Yes, I allowed myself to use an extra slot from a mod this time because I had no access to any crafting skill, and it's painful. I needed some extra something, you know. Quake gives you a chance to stagger anyone around you when you block an attack. It even works for arrows deflected with your shield. 45 bashing, as mentioned, stacks with everything else we already did to empower our bashing. Grit is quite vital too. It means you can still power attack even when out of stamina. You don't regenerate stamina normally, so it solves a lot of problems. And yeah, you will deal less damage when out of stamina, but all the extra effects like disarming and critical hits and all of that will still apply. You may need to swap the cloak, shield and ring for some elemental and magic resistance when going against a dragon or a mage, although I tried to deal with the mages at least by the means of shield charging and overwhelming them with a flurry of bashes and power attacks, and it was mostly successful. All the necessary spells were mentioned already, but just for the sake of orderliness, I guess here's the short and sweet list. You could potentially also use the Calming Rune before the fear spells are perked. So in the end we have a character that's extremely durable with no crafting involved. Has a whole arsenal of close range crowd control tools and the mastery over long range crowd control of illusion spells. I remember now why I wanted to play a knight on that fabled day when I first loaded Morrowind. Yeah, it is rather satisfying, tack. And that is it for this one. Let me know what you think. Click like, click subscribe, ring the bell, tell your spouse about me, write an article about me on your Facebook fan page, and we shall see each other again. Bye.